Hello, this is Kazam. I'm going to try to keep this video short and sweet. This is a render setup video, but I'm not going to be highlighting products or anything like that. I'm just going to show light setups, and I will go a little bit in depth into depth of field, no pun intended. At any rate, you can see here that I have the character pretty much surrounded with light. I like to do that to start with because it gives me a lot of very fast ways to deal with things. So I have a light to camera left, model right. I have a light over here to model left, camera right, and also a large soft light in front and slightly above the model. I also have this torus, this emissive surface, which serves, because it's in photometric, it serves as a ring flash. I use a ring flash in order to get good sharp specularity on a character or any subject. I use that rather than a specular highlight because I just find it easier to use, frankly. And it doesn't, if I go into a preview mode, then whether or not that specular highlight is turned on or hidden makes a huge difference. If I'm trying to look at some other aspect of a render, I find that kind of clumsy, so I decided to make one of these and let it go at that. At any rate, NVIDIA iRay, so that we are in iRay preview mode. Let me select the camera, aux viewport, and you can see that I have, because here on parameters I've selected camera, you can see my values here. I'm using an 80mm lens. That harkens back to my old Hasselblad days. You can also notice the aspect ratio I have here is one that I created, 4.5 to 5, which is a variation of a standard medium format, which is normally a 4:5 or 5:4, and this is in portrait mode. So I just created that for myself. Now let me go back to our scene tab. Well, actually, let me show you this. Sorry. This is your focal plane right here. You can see I have the f-stop at 12.5. What I've noticed is that the f-stop as it behaves here, which is strictly depth of field, not light. I'll get to that in a minute. In Daz Studio has a much different scale than a regular SLR, whether it be film or digital. If I wanted to get this kind of a look with an SLR, I would probably have to go to something like 65 on an SLR. In Daz, you can see that it gives almost an infinite focus for this small scene. So 12.5 is what I arrived at. And that seemed to give the proper isolation to the character's face. I wanted to isolate her face in order to show the specularity from the ring flash and to set her face apart from the rest of the image. And that was the purpose of that. So that's how I accomplished it. I'm using a focal length or an 80mm lens. What you'll want to do is decide on this first, your focal length. In other words, what kind of a lens do you want to use? Because that'll make a huge difference. For instance, if I go to a 35mm lens here, you see the difference? It's a much, much bigger. Mainly the higher your lens number, the more it is like a zoom lens, and the less of a, we'll call it a fisheye effect you'll get. If I were to go to a 150mm lens, you see that? It zooms in more. I like 80 for this right here. I think by default, let me show you the default with Daz is a 65mm lens when you load a camera. I went to 80, and that seems to work for me just fine for this image for what I wanted to use. All right, so there you have depth of field. I've explained the lighting a little bit. Now let's take a look at what I did with some of these. I had decided that I didn't like that fill light, which is camera left, model right. I didn't want that in there. Okay. It just gave a better, in my opinion, it just gave a better look to the image. I'm going to take away the dark bounce so that you can see the difference. Not only is more light coming in from the HDRI, but you don't get that good light to dark fall off if you don't have this this dark bounce enabled. You see that? It's more of a light box effect. It's more even lighting, but it also flattens your image. Now you can see good contrast, good fall off with light and dark. Also, it's very handy for preventing if you're going to do something that's a little more subtle like this. Let me bring back the Pippi bear fur, and as soon as that picks up, I will continue. There we go. You can see that not only is the character's clothing white, but the fur is white on this teddy bear. I don't want that, or those two items, to get too overexposed looking. I want them to remain looking white, but just not blown out. And at the same time, have enough light on the character and good shadow. You can see if you look on the character's nose here, you see you get good subtle shadow. You get good fall off between light and dark. You have good shadow here. And as you can see also, the specularity begins showing up on her face. Look at her lips and look at her eyes, particularly her right eye. If I have too much light on the subject, then that specularity has to compete with that ambient light. And this is the balance that I arrived at, what I wanted for this image. Of course, you will have to figure out what you like for yourself, but you can give this a try. At any rate, I hope that was helpful. Again, this is Kazam. Please remember to hit the like and subscribe. We will see you again soon, and in the meantime, happy rendering.